Hey everyone, this is Carlos. I'm the founder and CEO of Product School, and I'm here with my friend Ken, who's the former VP of Product at MasterClass, among many other things. Product management instructor at UC Berkeley, book author, product consultant. So, hey Ken.
Hi, Carlos. How are you?
I'm
Good to
good.
see
Thank
you
you for
again.
joining us from the other side of the world in Australia.
Yes, that's right. I'm currently in Australia, Melbourne, Australia.
Very cool. I'm glad to have you. You've been a really good contributor to the community since the very beginning. So this is a new format that we are trying, and I think this is going to be good for the community to get to know a little more about your own personal story.
Oh, I'm really excited to do this. Thanks, Carlos.
So let's start from the beginning. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I've been working in the Bay Area for quite some time. Originally from Australia, as a Australian native, I got my break into product management in Australia, and really just fell in love with it, and ended up working for a company in Melbourne. And there was PMs weren't really even a thing back then, so I kind of joined this company and eventually did all the things that a product manager would do. And as I said, loved it. Came to San Francisco and have been there ever since. Since then, I've worked in a variety of different companies, and as you mentioned before, joined UC Berkeley to teach about 8 years ago, and found the first product management class, in-person class, now virtual class, at UC Berkeley to teach product management. And I've also been pretty big into online education, as you can see, and was head of product at lynda.com, which got acquired by LinkedIn, and more recently at MasterClass.
I met you when you were the VP of Product at Lynda, even before the LinkedIn acquisition.
Yes, that's right. We go back a while.
I know. So you've been in the online education space for a while, and obviously now we are all being forced to do a lot of that online. So what do you think are like some of the main trends that you've seen?
Well, I think consumer comfort and behavior and technology has really caught up, and so we've learned to adapt and reproduce some of the things that were really lacking back in online education back in the day, just like 5-7 years ago, where it was largely kind of MOOCs and video learning, this kind of passive kind of experience, and very high quality and really great, but very alone. You tended to be by yourself or asynchronous, and didn't really feel necessarily a connection to others. And I think now we've really seen evolution of more interactive learning, being good example is Product School, right? Really, some level you were already going online, but also you were forced to sort of accelerate that. And so I think everyone's kind of going through the same thing. And just because our entire lives are virtual now, one of the challenges has been, well, now we have to figure it out. And like even classes at UC Berkeley, which were formerly in-person project-based classes that required us working very intimately in small teams and in sort of a group, and having a lot of dialogue and a lot of that kind of free-flowing kind of bouncing off each other ideas and letting that work. We've had to figure that out online, and people are incredibly adaptable. So that's what I think what the big trends are, and the technology has obviously caught up as well. And so doing all of that, some of my favorite new tools that I now use every day in product management, I used to do on the whiteboard, or we used to have meetings for, and now like those tools are actually out there, and they're getting pretty sophisticated.
Definitely. I remember back in the day trying to share a screen and the internet connection is not good, and now you have virtual whiteboards and it's beautiful and people can collaborate. It's a whole new game.
Absolutely.
So now you are working as a consultant for different clients. So tell me a little bit more about it, because I've heard this term of product consultant, but I think there's a little bit of confusion.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that actually requires education of any potential client that I talk to. But one of my passions is that I really want to scale my impact. I want to make all product managers everywhere, just like, you know, that's why we've really clicked Colors, is because we've got very similar personal missions, is make product management everywhere as great as it can be. And so when you talk about product management consultant, people are like, oh, what does that mean? That you sort of do product management for a while and like you just manage a piece of the life cycle, or you just, you know, you come on in and do something and then leave, and then where's that kind of cycle of accountability and things? So it takes a lot of education to really break down what the, if you will, services that a product consultant can offer. And if you think about the need, where I've really found my niche is there's a lot of companies out there that have gone through the early startup phases, or they can even be quite advanced, but their product management function tends to be lagging the rest of the organization. And so they kind of hit this point where they realize that either because engineering isn't as efficient as it could be, or the product's not shipping as frequently. And so my role is really to come on in and help them mature that product management function, through sort of looking at their product itself. How to actually build a product strategy, clarify the KPIs you're really striving for, and what kind of roadmap to build out. So it's very, very strategic what I do. The secondly would be sort of processes. So what are the missing things? Like discovery is often just a missing thing in a lot of these companies. They just don't talk to customers, don't figure out what problems to solve. They jump straight into these solutions, and therefore they have these downstream problems as a result. And it looks like, oh, we're not, you know, we can't build the right products, but that's really, it's all upstream. And then finally, people. And so I do a lot of coaching and development, particularly of very senior, like directors who might be being groomed to move into roles, or maybe newly promoted head of products. And sometimes I'll even help with hiring, and that's sort of where I complete the cycle of sort of replacing myself as almost like this interim head of product to be able to then move on. And so my roles, my engagements tend to be quite long, quite immersed, but still very much a third party, very much about enabling that organization to continue to scale. And I do that rinse and repeat, and it's a lot of fun.
And I guess now you have access to so many different companies and industries that it's also a good learning experience for yourself.
Well, this is it. I'm a lifelong learner. And so for me, it's really about constantly learning. It's also why I teach. It really keeps me on my toes. I have to be ahead of the curve. I have to be like what I did even like 5 years ago. I've got to be evolving that. And so I've often heard like, oh, product consultants, like they kind of, you know, they're not going to be able to be good people in the company full time, or they don't know the latest or whatever. But it's actually quite the opposite. And I'm exposed to so many different cultures and so many different, and what I mean by the company cultures or team cultures, so many different issues that one company will be having no problem with one thing, and then another company will be having a devil of a time with that same thing. And so just seeing these things emerge means that I'm always learning, and always learning how to adapt in a new situation, and also developing my people and adaptability skills as well. And so yeah, I love learning.
You might not remember this, but the first time we met, you took out a napkin and you were kind of explaining me the learning path, and then you asked me the question, what is the ultimate learning? And then you said teaching. And I remember that because I think it's so true. Like, well, sometimes being on the other side, that doesn't mean that we are not learning. Absolutely.
I mean, that is the reason why I do remember that. And there's steps all the way there. Like, that's why, back to this evolution of online learning, just passively consuming things, you only really deeply understand only so much. But as you move up and actually attempting to do it and do exercise, and actually doing a project or actually implementing it, and then kind of moving into that realm where now I'm actually actually mentoring and teaching others, you have to have really not only done it well, but you need to have been able to distill it down to like the essence and being able to like show people how to do it. That is the ultimate of really mastering your craft. And I do remember that that I don't know if it was pyramid or steps or anything, but it is something I believe in today, and therefore, yes, if you want to truly know whether or not you've mastered something, try to teach it, and then you'll really not only learn whether you have or not, but you'll start to really be able to crystallize the essence of what you do and be able to do it better yourself.
So what would you say are now the biggest myths and misconceptions around product managers or product management teams?
Yeah, I think, well, from within those teams or within the companies, and sort of more in a digital environment.
So you go to a lot of different companies and you see patterns, I'm sure. So is there anything that you can extrapolate to say, hey, watch out?
Yeah, well, even though we think, we like to think that we're no longer still kind of obsessed with the delivery. And I still see far too many teams spending all of their time on delivery and driving forward project management tasks. And it's just this unbreakable thing between balancing the urgent and the important. And so I think the myth that product managers are like, there's a lot of literature, a lot of learning about like moving upstream and being much more focused on the upstream components. I still see a lot of teams sort of working downstream, and so that's one misconception that is kind of a solved problem, and it takes a lot to sort of get people out of that, because we're still holding product, which rightly we're holding product managers to shipping and shipping quality, but we've also got to find a better balance, I think, with being able to depend on our engineering teams, particularly to help us craft solutions. So getting clear about what the role of product management around the problem space and the solution space. That's one. The second is this tendency to think that we're in the job of building websites or technology solutions, or that we're even in the job of building digital products. Well, that's not true. We're actually in the job of solving customers' problems. And I think we get this, again, we get so obsessed with the technology solutions or our part of the customer journey without actually thinking about the full customer journey. And to basically think about all of the different human real-world touch points, to really stop ignoring that entire customer experience. That's another thing that is sort of a misconception, that we're only in the business of building a product, but actually there's so much more to that entire experience that we need to be paying attention to. And just by pointing that out and mapping out the entire customer experience, that can often lead to these aha moments of like, oh, we thought the problem was here, but actually it's downstream when they contact customer service, and there's all this confusion, and so we've got to fix that. So there's those sorts of things. So really, we're not in the job of building a technology and product in search of a problem. It's basically where we've got to take the problem first and actually say, what is the best way to actually solve it for the customer?
I completely agree with you. I think there's, especially when I started product school, maybe still today, there's a lot of confusion between project management and product management. And there's a lot of pressure around like shipping, that sometimes there's so many other things that are not just about shipping that we may miss out. Yeah,
exactly. In fact, our job, I like to say this, I sometimes mess it up, but basically our job is to build the right product, not to build the product right. That's kind of actually others' job. The more we spend thinking about, is this the right thing to be building and right thing to be prioritizing our scarce resources on? Is this really going to solve a customer need that's important and prioritized? And then saying no to other things. That's where we add, frankly, the most value. It's also the hardest, and it's also the hardest to re-educate your organization around, and I've got no silver bullet answer there, except start doing it, start showing value, even if it's on a smaller scale, and you can really actually earn trust to go from there. It will take time, but that's the crux of where you can be the most valuable for your organization.
So for you, Ken, like when or how did you learn that stuff? Because you mentioned that you started product management in Melbourne, and then you moved to the States. But like at some point, there are only so many books and MasterClass classes that you can watch. Like where do you actually learn those type of soft skills that help you go from PM all the way up to VP of product?
Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right. Early on, what really propelled me forward was sort of mastering my technical or tactical skills. But when I say technical, I don't mean technical. I mean like the things we would think about, like product requirements, product delivery, sort of working with user experience, design, and shipping and KPIs and things like that. And increasingly, taking greater and greater ownership, a ship it mindset, my analysis skills. Those were all like really, really important skills to master, and you can learn those sort of online, if you will, or through great mentors, or just by figuring out what the frameworks are and then going from there. So there's this whole group of technical skills. I think I've even tried to count them up at one point. There's like 20 different like key things that you can do that you can actually just learn by going online and sort of like, oh, here's a really interesting framework that I can use and try, or take a workshop. And so while you still need to master those, don't not go to pro school, don't not sort of go online and do your workshops and things. But what really drove a step change in my career was as I understood and appreciated the value of adaptive skills. And adaptive skills are the ones that are actually central to you being influential in your organization. It's what we might call high EQ, or it might be sort of what we might term loosely as interpersonal skills, although it's far, far more than that. I call them the influential skill set, and that's basically what my entire book is about. And really, it's something that the first thing to do is to acknowledge that you're probably not very good at it. So drop the ego. Once you actually acknowledge that these are things that you need to work on, you move into this sort of conscious, incompetent self. It's where you're no longer unconscious, incompetent, that you're bad at it and you don't know you're bad at it. You're now acknowledging that you're probably not good at it, which is your first step to actually getting really good at it. Because what happens is that you seek feedback. You start practicing those skills just like you would other things. You identify which ones to focus on. You identify those with your manager, and you kind of talk those through. And if you've got high trust, which I hope you do, that your manager will definitely help you. You find mentors in the organization that can help you. And you find mentors in industry that can help you, and then you practice them. And the reality is, while you might be able to go online and learn a feedback model, it's not until you practice giving feedback 15 times that you actually realize, oh, what's working, what's not working. And then you got to do another 50 before you're good at it, and then so on. So, and because we find ourselves in such different environments, because people are complex and organizations have different cultures, these are not easily like just taught. And so my ethos and how I actually help students along the way, for example, is put them into situations where they have to actually apply these skills and see. And if I just get them to acknowledge, maybe I'm not that great at this and I need to actually improve on it, that's a big win, because that's the first step to moving forward.
Love that. Like going from like, what you don't know what I don't know to I know I'm not good at it, so then you can fix it.
That's the key step. And don't overwhelm yourself. You don't have to be good at everything. Pick one thing that you want to really practice, like public speaking, or building that relationship with that really difficult stakeholder, or try to not blame your engineering team every time something goes wrong. Like, just pick one thing that you want to really like improve at and apply yourself. And it's so rewarding when you actually make progress there, and that's where your confidence will build, and that growth mindset really kicks in.
And you have that growth mindset. You mentioned you're a lifelong learner. So what's next for you? What are you passionate about learning these days?
Well, I'm in a really interesting point. I love product management, and one of my problems is I love problems. So you can give me a problem. I've worked in search, e-commerce, enterprise, like consumer products, startups, large companies, and I actually find myself just loving problems to solve. I'm very passionate about learning more and applying myself to solve bigger problems in education. Obviously, I've recently started to dabble in healthcare, and I do think that there's some really meaningful needs. I've always been interested also in development throughout the world and how the internet can actually solve inequality and poverty and things like that. So these are big, massive problems, right? So we haven't even started to scratch the surface. I get very excited about ideas. So basically, what I'm learning now is how to scale myself and try to and I'm by no means at a point that I'm sort of whatever. I have a lot of experience, and I feel like I have a lot to give, and I want to be thoughtful and humble about that. I do think that right now I'm trying to learn how to help others be successful, and very specifically right now I'm learning how to market a book, and that's way outside of my wheelhouse. I'm terrible at marketing, I realized, and so I just have to apply myself and learn how to do those two things. But when you see when you see others work more effectively because of a little bit about what you were able to sort of help them do or unlock, it was in them all the time. It's very rewarding, and so that's kind of what I'm trying to learn, how to do more of that.
But you also, as you were talking about books, you also wrote a book.
Yes, that's right. I wrote this one, The Influential Product Manager. Yeah. How to lead and launch successful technology products. And as everything I've just been talking about, it's really about influence, obviously, about the applying these adaptive skills into your environment. So I don't drone on about agile or like how to run this or run this process. I basically break down the tools, the frameworks, and I want this to be extremely practical book that you could apply with actual tips and ideas that you could really apply to kind of the situation that was going to help you influence sort of a path forward and collaborate well throughout every single stage of the life cycle. So if you're trying to prioritize your backlog, for example, or there are tools there I lay out about how to actually do that well from more of an influencing perspective, like how to actually, for example, set goals, align on criteria, and then actually look at features, and then get everyone aligned around at least the process that you're using, because you're never going to get consensus. So just acknowledging, I'm never going to get consensus on my priorities. They're always going to change, and no one's going to agree with them. But if I just apply these frameworks, at least I can influence and get greater stability and get everyone on board about how we're actually going about it. That's just an example. And now imagine that through every part of the life cycle. I've got stuff about delivery and working with engineering about how to approach customer discovery, and how to even write your KPIs from an empathetic point of view for really trying to measure the value that your product's delivering to your customers. So I try to really break that down, and so it was a labor of love, and I'm really thrilled at its response. To be honest, I wasn't expecting it, but a lot of really good feedback, which tells me that there was a gap in the market in terms of really being able to break down what influence even is, because I think we talk about that a lot, but we don't necessarily know what it is, and being able to break it down and say, okay, here's how to go about it in these situations, I think has really hit home with a lot of the ends.
People like you, Ken.
Well, I mean,
no,
thank you.
And I resonate with that statement because I've seen a lot of books out there about how to hack your resume, how to answer interview questions, which it's not bad, don't get me wrong, but it's not about how to actually build teams and products. So I think those frameworks are important, especially a little later in people's career. I remember when I was a full-time student, I just didn't care about anything. So I had to buy a lot of books just because my professors asked me to, and I had to read them. But now when I go and I pick a book, it's such a different mindset. I just go because I'm seeking learning.
Exactly. There's a lot of really great books out on the market. And I think when product managers ask me what books to read, and I'm not going to give any specific recommendations, but I generally actually say, look, you can read the product management literature on the market, and please read mine. But at the same time, there's a lot of really amazing books on just leadership or just design approaches, thinking about like just philosophy. I've got a product manager who I really admire, a very senior guy and he just spends all this time just finding these different books about the human condition and history, philosophy, and it just brings this interesting sort of perspective to almost any problem, because it's learning sort of outside the boundaries. But if you're thinking about how to be a better PM, don't just focus on the tactics of getting that interview or getting and passing that interview, or being able to kind of run textbook level Scrum, which I rarely see actually is truly implemented in its theoretical form. Now, that's no criticism to studying those things. You should absolutely do well in your interviews, and should absolutely structure your Scrum well. But if you want to be that really well-rounded product manager, reach outside those boundaries to kind of learn these sort of areas that are maybe outside of what you would imagine to be essential of product management reading.
I remember last year in Los Angeles, you gave a keynote speech at ProductCon LA when in-person gatherings were a thing, and your talk was about empathy, and I found it really, really interesting to kind of take us out of the standard frameworks and focus on like how to connect with people regardless of your title.
Yeah, that was a really fun presentation, and one of the things I was really touching on there is being aware of your own cognitive biases and the cognitive biases that you might be subject to in your organization, and then some of the things that might be impacting you in terms of setting up a good psychological safety in your team. There's these sort of things that really unlock a lot of value that are kind of, once you get those relationships going and can kind of empathize with your team, or even just empathize with yourself in the situation. Sometimes you're not in the ideal situation. You can have a much better time at it. You're more resilient. You can approach difficult conversations a lot more easily as well. So those are the things that, right back to that question, those are the things that I found were more essential once I kind of got a certain level of capability in my product management to really make me more successful. Or occasionally when I failed to do that well was what caused me to struggle.
Well, it's been a pleasure to chat with you and get a bit more of the inside story. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, just for aspiring and even early, well, all product managers out there, I think you can't pay enough attention to understanding what you can do to be more influential in your organization, and that's going to be a lot to do with these more adaptive, what we might even call softer or people skills. But it's not only about that; it's about how you apply them during your typical product management process. I can't emphasize enough. Don't be afraid to ask for guidance and learn from your peers. Go and build your network early. Go get coffee, tea virtually right now. More often, actually do that now, because people want and are more than happy to jump on a Zoom call for 30 minutes. Just don't be afraid to sort of always be learning.
Well, thank you again, Ken. Take care. Bye.
You're welcome. Thanks, Carlos. See you later, everyone.